Hello, folks. Okay, I hope that this almost midterm time finds you doing well and feeling confident and comfortable with all of the content. I have had quite a few of you write questions about the wiki, and I know that we're kind of in our off week for wiki writing. Oh, I take that back. No, actually, yeah. We're in our off week for wiki writing. You wrote last week about this topic. But just to clarify, the wiki, by virtue of its structure, and it's kind of usually a collaborative tool, we're using it sort of as a personally collaborative tool where you can add and take things away throughout the course. It's a portfolio, and it's just a structure to house our course portfolio, which is going to be our final exam. What it's going to entail is every time that there's a wiki prompt, that's a new layer you add to it. And then at the end, we'll have a week where you can go back and edit and add in some of these green highlighted blogs that I want you to have as pages in your wiki. And you could basically design it in any way you wish as long as you're sticking with the prompts. The rubric for grading the wiki is in the same place as the syllabus in your classroom, and so if you want to see that, you can, as long as you're answering all of these prompts and heeding some of the suggestions I give, you're going to be fine for your final exam. And the point of this activity is to give you something to take away. I'm hoping to share them all out to the whole class so that everybody walks away with over a dozen portfolios of ideas for writing classrooms. So let's say I write my whole portfolio based on third grade and I end up getting a junior high placement somehow. When maybe I'm subbing long term for somebody, I can pull somebody's junior high wiki and it would help me to get a fresh start. So many of us, when we jump into that first job, get caught off guard. One of my very first teaching jobs, I was a permanent sub in a special ed setting. Obviously, I wasn't special ed certified. Well, not obviously to you because you didn't know that, but I wasn't special ed certified. But I was available, and I was the one the students knew, and they felt comfortable, and so that's who the principal felt was the best fit. And that teacher did not return. It was a tragedy, and she was not able to come back to school. So you never know what you're going to teach, and you want to be as prepared as you can because it's awfully hard to scramble in those last minute situations, and that's why we make portfolios for future use. Okay, all of that to say that we're going to move on to Unit 3. Remember, in the first week of each unit, we're in the first week now with September 22nd. In this first week, you're responsible for reading, you're responsible for posting to the discussion board, and posting to the blog. The following week, you might want to go back and reread to refresh, respond to the discussions and to the blogs that peers posted. So it's your reply time, and you build your wiki. I like to think of it like a research and idea development week followed by a reply and apply week. Because to me, the wiki is a big application point. So what are we going to be reading this week? We're going to get back into Outwell, chapters 10 through 14. She calls it Teaching with a capital T. In Edutopia, we're going to visit them for that site for a user's guide assignment by Ashley Hutchinson. This was a really popular assignment to read about by my students summer semester or summer term, so you might enjoy it. At least I'm hoping you will. As far as summative and formative assessments, we're going to be talking obviously more about assessing this week. And as far as assessments go, we know about these two types probably from our other education classes, but if we need a review, that's what this tufts.edu source is. We also need to be starting to look at Common Core standards. Most states have adapted them, and what I'm understanding is that even the states that haven't are getting something very similar to Common Core approved. So I think if we use that as our pushing off point, that would be good. I really recommend that if you have a smartphone, you get the free app for Common Core standards. But you don't have to. I just have found it to be very handy as I've been writing curriculum for Common Core as well. Okay, so you need to have access to Common Core standards. You can find them online on the ODE as well. Okay, in Edutopia, we're going to read a blog about improving student writing by Allie Parrish, and she's going to give us some strategies for doing that, because obviously that's what we're doing this for, right? We're trying to improve our students' writing. And in Faculty Focus, there's a whole article about designing of prompts. And you've already written some of your prompts, but that doesn't mean you're set in stone with those. You can go back and revise those, but you also don't have to redo them all. What we want to look at is prompts that really engage students, and if we're thinking of writing as a type of assessment, is it really going to draw out of our students what their potential can reflect? We've all had tests or papers that we feel like really don't show what we really know, and we want to make sure that as educators we create writing prompts with a purpose and with a depth and an insight that helps students to really get ideas out there, no matter what subject we're teaching, whether it's social studies or math, whatever. How can we get students to write intelligently in a reflective way, and to relate their ideas more effectively? I guess I'm not relating mine very effectively. I'm stuttering around. Okay, there's a lot of reading because it's the first week, but again, you can revisit it next week. These next few pieces are more resources that I think are interesting. Probably of the readings this week, the textbook reading goes the most in depth and lays some groundwork, and the other readings are more like to generate ideas and get you thinking about the textbook readings. Hopefully that makes sense. I threw in a PDF that is based on templates written by Gerald Graff and Kathy Birkenstein, and I find them to be extremely insightful and helpful in helping students write at all levels, because templates are like training wheels and they get students unstuck. And so this is a PDF showing you some templates that you might want to teach from and help students with. And right here is a link to Bloom's taxonomy, because I want to be thinking about how we can get students beyond comprehension, beyond just relaying what they read. How can we get them to be more at the create level or more at the critical thinking level in the way we prompt them in their writing? On that note, one of you already touched on this, or a couple of you did, when you analyzed good and bad writing experiences, I believe last week or 2 weeks ago. And many of you said that there were some teachers that just made you want to write, and some assignments that just made you want to write. And I thought this video, the video that, it's not linked here, but it's in the classroom links under the Read and Watch. I think you'll really like this one from what it says about how we prompt students in their writing, and how much of what we get depends on the type of writing task we're designing for students. So all of these pieces, please take into consideration. I believe there's also a guest lecture video. We'll look at that in a second. Take all of these pieces, read through them, digest them, and then bring them into the conversation in your discussion board and blog. Especially on your blog, I'd like you to use references. Discussion board, I don't care as much because it's more opinion. But in your discussion board this week, I'd like you to talk about writing assessments as they relate to formative and summative types. I think sometimes we tend to think of papers only as summative and writing as a summative task, but how do these two different types matter, and why are they distinct? Or you don't have to answer that one. You can answer just one of these prompts. Or what are your tried and true strategies for success as a writer? What are your go-to methods in the writing process? If we're going to teach writing process, what do we already know that works for us as writers? Again, you don't need to have any resources for that. But when you get to the blog, would you please use some of these reading and video resources and make sure you cite them. You notice this is in green. That means it's going to become part of your wiki. If you want to dump it into a wiki page anytime soon, you're welcome to, after you've completed, of course. But I'm going to ask you to create a chart or graphic of your favorite prompts or writing tasks from the readings and from your original creation. At this point, after the readings this week, we've looked at a lot. Some of these you might have already made into your wiki. You don't need to repeat those. These are just the extras that maybe didn't make it into your wiki for this class, but that you want to keep kind of tabbed as important for future. I want you to label them as how you would envision using them for formative and summative assessment, and I want you to also label which Common Core standard they would work for. You can choose one if you're a multiple grade, if you're going to be certified in multiple grades. So the blog is a little bit more complex this week, and that's why it's going into the wiki. I'm going to ask that you create a chart or a graphic of your favorite prompts. I'm purposely not telling you how many. Just don't overlap with the wiki, because the wiki is something separate. Label whether you would use those as formative or summative. Some of them can be used as both, and you can explain that out. And then tie them to a standard, so you know that it's something that would teach a standard. So that if you have to do a gap analysis on your designs, you can always fill in. The wiki isn't required until next time, so I don't want to muddy the water by talking about it too much, but a lot of this stuff is going to feed over. But that's for next week. Just know it's there, know where you're headed, but don't feel like you have to do that. Let's quick jump over into the classroom. And I want to see under Read and Watch, I want to see what other videos we have this week, if there's any introduction needed. Okay, these are all of the links that we talked about, the reading links in the classroom. And it looks like I do not have, I think we were already pretty heavy this week, so I did not include a guest lecture in this week. So these are all the materials you need to read, except for the Atwell book, and the Atwell book, of course, you have at this point. And I think just to close out today, I want to talk a little bit about rethinking how we think of assessments, and just reminding you of the importance to begin with the end in mind. The reason that I'm having you start in your wiki last week with the prompts, the tasks you want to build towards, is because I want you to learn to build backwards. And maybe you've talked about this in some of your other writing courses, but we really should be starting with what objectives we're trying to fulfill. And this has to do with, to me, both learning objectives as well as classroom climate objectives, because that's all part of the whole learner, right? So we want to consider our whole learner, what they need to learn, what they need to know, what they need to experience to grow, and how we can make those goals achievable by how we assess our students. And since we're talking about writing, one of the major forms of assessing writing is actually writing itself, or writing tasks. I think sometimes we tend to think, like I said before, of writing as something that's completely summative. But I want you to start thinking about the steps of writing, and how little writings and casual writings and informal writings and writing activities can feed into that summative assessment, and how much we can learn in the writer's process about the writer, how much we can help that student learn about themselves, that forms, formative, right? That forms that learning objective. It forms the student into that place we want to see them end up at. How can little steps along the way, little pause points, help us to recognize areas where students are going to need help? And I'm guilty of this. I think I tend to teach something and then say, let's go write. How can we break down writing a bit to help the student, but also to help us as teachers to better inform our instruction, to better create tasks that are authentic to the learner's experience? That word authentic, there's another one to think about. Okay, lots to think about this week. I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with your ideas. And if you have any questions at all, as always, make sure you reach out and communicate. Bye-bye.